The actions of the criminal government of Israel in attacking a ship of humanitarian aid workers loaded with urgently needed supplies for the people of Palestine in international waters does, of course, constitute a heinous crime and a clear breach of international law. And every Israeli soldier who participated in murdering the aid workers on board is, of course, nothing more than a common terrorist. All should be arrested and tried for their crimes in The Hague, as should each member of the terrorist Israeli government who approved the attack. All aid should immediately be withheld from the rogue terrorist state of Israel, and sanctions should be placed against them. All terrorism and international crimes are unacceptable, folks, and the actions of the terrorist government of Israel should be no exception. Even more especially because the Israeli government carried out this heinous crime in order to be able to perpetuate the slow genocide and systematic murder of Palestinians within the occupied territories in Gaza. It truly is disgusting on every level, folks. I mean, what is the mindset of these scumbags? Oh, don't you dare interfere with our genocide of the Palestinian people. We believe genocide was attempted against us once, and we don't want to be seen as incapable, so now we wish to show the world how proficient we have become at genocide ourselves. Something like that anyway. Good old Israel. War, death, murder, terrorism, and more war, all carried out with the unbridled ego of thinking that Israel can do no wrong because those of the Jewish faith are God's chosen people. I suppose they think that they were in fact chosen by God to murder everyone who disagrees with them or something. It truly is the most demented and ego-driven state in the history of the world, I think, and I'm honestly surprised it hasn't simply imploded in upon itself in a fit of intellectual incompetence and overwhelmingly self-absorbed ego. I truly am. Though, again, I digress, because it is the government, of course, folks. It's not the people. Of course, many of the people have been indoctrinated into that type of thinking due to their corrupt and overtly demented and ego-driven education system. But you can't blame them, folks. People invariably act, think and feel how they are trained to act, think and feel. But it's not their fault. It's simply the way they have been trained. The Jewish people are, in fact, among those who suffer the most for the crimes of the Israeli government, as the wanton acts of violence, hatred, racism and terrorism carried out by the Israeli government are typically blamed on the people by a large section of the international community. People see the Israeli government carry out yet another crime and they tend to jump on the let's hate the Jews bandwagon. But it's not the Jews, folks, they're just people, like the people of every country. They are simply being used as scapegoats, but it's not they who are to blame. It's the Zionist terrorists who are in charge of the government. It's quite clever the way it's done, really, folks. You see, due to the fact that people tend to just blame the Jews for the crimes of the Israeli government, that then provides the terrorist Israeli government with the support from the people that it needs in order to continue carrying out its international criminal activity. The poor Jewish people think they are hated by the world and they need a strong government to keep them safe, when in fact it is their government who goes out of their way to stimulate international animosity towards the Jewish people. Good old Israel. You see, Israel is a terrorist state, folks. It's a terrorist state because it's got a corrupt, psychopathic terrorist government. Not the people, the government. Now, Israel is the cause of virtually all instability in the Middle East, and in fact throughout most of the globe. I mean, Israel is little more than a private weapons lab and terrorist base for the Rothschild family anyway, folks. When one looks at how it was all set up and who set it up and how it's been run, well, that's the obvious conclusion that one comes to. But then even when acknowledging the actions of the utterly corrupt government of Israel and looking at what happened with the piracy and murder Israel just carried out against the aid flotilla, when one looks deeper, there's probably a little more to the incident than first meets the eye. I mean, really, folks, let's look at it. I mean, did anybody seriously think that Israel was going to let the aid flotilla through anyway? Of course they weren't. You know, when has Israel ever done anything right? When has Israel ever backed down and done the right thing. Israel's broken more international laws, more UN directives than anybody. It just doesn't care, folks. Israel can do no wrong as far as the Israeli government's concerned, and they'll kill anybody. And I mean, look what just happened in Dubai. They sent all these Mossad agents to kill some guy in another country, and it was all caught on film. I mean, they're just a bunch of scumbags, folks. So we knew the aid flotilla wasn't going to get through. Of course they weren't going to get through. And what happened almost immediately after? Well, we saw Turkey and possibly even Iran say that they're going to send gunships to accompany the next aid flotilla. Well, of course they are, because all of these governments are part of the same cartel and they are all working towards the same goal, and that is a confrontation between the East and the West. They're all puppeteering this whole thing. I mean, even the president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, is a Zionist. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the people of Iran. What's wrong with Iran is the same as everywhere else. It's the government. It's always the government. It's all about energy, folks. It's all about creating as much negativity and mayhem through this current transitional period as possible. We have the global economic meltdown that's being orchestrated around the world. We have the oceans filling with oil. With this whole Israeli mess, we have World War III virtually on our doorstep. Gee, what else can we give the people to put this consciousness into a state of fear and stress through this period? I know, let's pour millions of gallons of toxic oil dispersant into the Gulf so it turns into the worst acid rain the world has ever seen. Oh, by the way, folks, the oil dispersant in question, Correx at 9500, is actually also a neurotoxin as well, folks. So I think we may well be in for a very interesting time in the next 6 months or so once it starts raining neurotoxins on the people. You've certainly got to give these people 10 points for deviousness, folks. Absolutely. But I think it's time we go for a break now, folks. So we'll go and have a break. And that's a little bit for you to think about there. And I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. And welcome back, folks. I'll have to ask you also at the moment to excuse any animal noises you might hear around the place, folks. I've got a lot of birds sort of carrying on outside. I have a whole family of geckos that seem to have moved into my little cabin that I'm living in. I have this thing about nature, I think, folks. I seem to attract a lot of wild creatures for some reason. I had a very friendly wallaby in the last place that I lived in that used to come and eat out of my hand. I actually quite miss her. I had the encounter with the echidna in here a few weeks ago. I have a magpie that seems to have moved onto my back doorstep, and I tend to feed it every day. And I've got this family of geckos that have moved into my lounge room. So that's quite interesting, folks. But back to the matter at hand. Now, before the break, I was talking about the situation that occurred in Gaza, the aid flotilla. And again, folks, all the world is a stage. Now, nobody really should have expected this aid flotilla to get through the blockade. I mean, I'm sure there were people on board the ships who really did want to go in there and help the people in Gaza. But I'm also sure that there were other people who saw the aid flotilla as a sacrificial lamb. We can send this aid flotilla in. We know that Israel is going to attack the aid flotilla. We can make sure that there is a confrontation when Israel does board the aid flotilla, and we can cause an international incident which will give us the opportunity to send gunships in there. You see, it can be that easy, folks. All they have to do is send in a flotilla of aid workers accompanied by a gunship. Israel being Israel, of course, and wanting confrontation and not caring about anything but Israel, Israel will, of course, send a gunship in return. There'll be a confrontation, and bingo, one world war. It really is that simple to do. But it's all being orchestrated, folks. The whole thing's being orchestrated. You see, the problem with Israel isn't Israel. It's the fact that Israel was set up by a cartel to do the very thing that it's doing now. It was set up to perform a specific purpose. The problem isn't Israel. The problem is those who are in control of Israel. And it's the same cartel that's in control of everything else. It's the same cartel that's in control of the banking system, the global central banking system. The same cartel that's in control of America, that puppeteers Obama, that puppeteers Gordon Brown, that puppeteers Kevin Rudd in my country, that puppeteers Ahmadinejad, that puppeteers the people who organise the aid flotilla. It's all the one thing, folks. It's all being done to orchestrate a series of events to put human consciousness in a state of complete stress through this transitional period.